Mr. Morgan's librarian, a woman. Young woman librarian continues work of Great Morgan Collection. Belle Green, she is the curator of the Morgan Library. Spending J.P. Morgan's money for rare books, that is one of the pleasant duties of the librarian of the financier, Miss Belle Green, who at 26 has won fame by her intimate knowledge of valuable tomes. $50,000 for that book. $10,000 librarian speaks a word for $400 sisters. The feminist movement that cashes in. The cleverest girl I know, says J. Pierpont Morgan. This is why. She knows about rare books more than any other American. She has spent $42,000 for a single volume and outwitted a rich duke at auction. Her opinion of Caxton editions is sought by the greatest scholars. She is chic, vivacious, and interesting. In fact, a dandy, wholesome American girl, says Mr. Morgan. She wears her hair long and does not use glasses, runs to Europe on secret missions, and is the terror of Continental collectors' agents. Her name is Belle Green. All day, Miss Green works among books, most of which were printed before America was discovered.
It's 1912 and Belle is in the newspapers again. Since becoming J. Pierpont Morgan's personal librarian several years earlier, she has made international headlines for her beauty, brains, youth, and position. Belle crafted a public image that combined professional expertise with distinctive fashion choices that subverted the stereotype of how a librarian should dress. This clever use of her appearance helped her navigate and thrive in the male-dominated world of rare books and manuscripts, and hide her blackness in plain sight.
Olive complexion, green eye reflection, proud black lady, but maybe not in detection. Not cause neglection, we're talking early 1900s. Her moms chose to pass, kids took direction. Build the coast of green, it's the queen librarian. Born Marion Greener, but she went contrarian. See, her father was Harvard educated and black. In fact, the first to get that stat, so better know that.
I'm Anne-Marie Eze, a librarian at Harvard University.
And I'm Rachel Lowell Ellison, a leadership expert and executive coach.
This is Boss Like Belle, a podcast in which I seek inspiration from the life of the legendary American librarian Belle de Costa Green and dare myself and you to lead fearlessly like her.
Join us as we unpack the learnings and insights from the parallel lives of two Black women navigating the very white space of professional librarianship, a century apart.
Portuguese background was for a stellar mind. It also should be noted, Belle was kind of fine.
Episode 6, The Cleverest Girl I Know.
Wow, those are quite some headlines and articles. Are those typical of the press coverage of Green during her lifetime?
Yeah, they sure are. And what they have in common are references to her sex, her looks, her knowledge, and the money at her fingertips. How she was outsmarting Europeans. And the articles, they're usually accompanied by some kind of alluring photograph or even a drawing of her looking beautiful or in action at auction. And the article, the last headline, was taken from, it really stood out to me, because it accompanied by not one but two images of Green. And the first is a drawing of her from behind, standing on tiptoes to reach books on a high shelf, and her posture accentuates her tiny waist, slender bare arms, nape of her neck, and thick tresses. And the second is a photograph of her seated in profile with her hands clasped on one knee in a way which reminds me of what we'll call today a cheerleader pose.
I think when you were describing the patterns that you're seeing in the media coverage, it feels like it's like this, not salacious, but there's something, they're trying to get our attention.
Well, if it wasn't an anachronism, I would say like presenting her as a pin-up, but at the same time, they also talk about how intelligent she is. So
right.
Both things at the same time.
Is that rare for the time to have that portrayal of a woman professional?
I assume so,
Sure,
yeah.
yeah.
Let alone a librarian.
Right. Wow. So what do you think she thought about all of this attention? Did she appreciate it?
Yeah, well, we know a little bit. It seems to be kind of like contradictory. So, one of her letters to her lover, and friend Bernard Berenson in 1912, so around this time when she was really in the press quite a lot, she wrote,
I really must be grudgingly admitted the most interesting person in New York, for it's all they talk about.
Almost like she was just like fed up with how much attention she was getting and that she was always in the press. But at the same time, she did grant interviews to journalists, and she crafted her own persona by recounting like certain anecdotes about her triumphs in the book market, referring to her own style and fashion sense, or even talking about like where her love of rare books come from. You see these common threads, and it's she herself who's putting this information out there.
So what did Belle's presence in the media inspire you to do when you were thinking about bossing like Belle?
Oh, so much inspiration. So she inspired me to kind of craft my own personal brand, because essentially what she was doing back then is what we'd call today, personal brand. And also to revamp my style as well, my how I dress, how I wear my hair. So I connected with a woman called Angela Pitter, who's a digital marketing and corporate branding consultant, to help me with this personal brand.
Mm-hmm.
And also Dee Stubbs, she's my hairstylist, and she works in the award-winning hair salon called Simply Erin's, which is located in Cambridge, Massachusetts. Hi, Angela. Welcome to Boss Like Belle.
I'm so happy to be here. Thank you for inviting me. So I am Angela Pitter. I'm the founder and CEO of Livewire Collaborative, which is a digital marketing consultancy. I founded this business in 2012 when I launched. I wanted everyone to understand the power of your online presence, to understand how you can use all of the digital components, your website, your social media, your email marketing, to elevate your branding. So I work with larger nonprofits. I work with mid-sized companies that are established. I'm really working with both to get them to that next level and achieve their goals.
So you and I have worked together on a couple of occasions. I came across you when I took a course that you were giving about social media, and I was doing it for the library because I wanted to elevate our brand. And I was so impressed by you that I hired you as a consultant. And can you just say in a few words like what you did for us?
The first step that I take with all my clients is I do an audit. So I go and look at everything online, your website, your email, all of your socials. And you had quite a few social sites at the time. So that was quite a bit of work to kind of understand what was going on. And then what are the recommendations to get you guys to the next level?
Fantastic. Yeah. And you really helped us to up our game. And that might sound crazy because we're at Harvard, right, which is a global brand. But within Harvard, there are so many different entities. And, Houghton was doing great work, but we wanted to do even better. And you were really helpful with us. So I reached out to you again to help me elevate my own personal brand. And then as I was working on this project on the podcast, I thought, I have to talk to Angela. She can help me with the promotion of it and marketing it, essentially. And in your opinion, what are the essential components of building a personal brand? And how would you say that these were exemplified in Belle Costa Green's approach to her own branding?
Right. So I think there's like 4 key components, starting with your story. And so you want to be authentic. You don't want to think about your story in terms of your accomplishments. You want to think about what's going to add value to your audience. So you want to share your journey. What are those things that are memorable? What makes you relatable as well, right? Because you're having a conversation. So, when people are doing job search, for example, they kind of start with their resume. But the resume, a lot of times, is just a list of I did this, I did this, I did that, right? And really, even with a resume, you want to do what I call as CAR, which is what's your challenge, what's your action, and then how did you resolve it? You also want to think about that visual identity. Then, especially for you leaders in any industry, you want to think about thought leadership and how do you build that? And a lot of that comes through the content and getting out there. And in this case, you're using your podcast as the platform to push your story out there. You want to think about different types of content, the content strategy, building that thought leadership through the content is key. And then the relationship is I would say the other final core component. And you want to think about how are you building these relationships? And a lot of people say, I want to have 1 million followers. Well, that's not the thing. It's the quality, it's not the quantity. So you want to think about who are those people in your industry, adjacent to your industry, that you should be engaging with. You may want to sort of partner with another influencer in the field or an adjacent field. So you could also get in front of another audience. So you really want to think about those 4 key components: branding, crafting your story, building the thought leadership, building out the content, and building out those relationships.
Thank you. And how would you say that these were exemplified by Belle?
So Belle was a boss. I love the title of the podcast, right? Boss like Belle. Her whole thing was rare books, manuscripts, and she wanted to be world renowned in that field. And that was a male dominant field. She figured out how to use that visual. So, her authentic self, the hats, the dress, all of that propelled her in front of people. So she controlled her narratives. She knew what her story was, and she stayed to her story. And I think part of it too, that was intriguing. You see pictures with her smoking, and they talk about how she flipped all over Europe without an escort. And I think that was part of her showcasing her male dominance, so to speak. So, she's like, I can play in this field too. I'm rough, tough, and tumble. I think she was almost a closet tomboy. So as much as she liked to dress, I'm guessing she probably cussed a few people out. She controlled her narrative by contracting with these elite photographers, getting her repertoire of photos and getting that out there in the media. The social connections, the relationships. I think JP Morgan was a key way. I think she hooked onto that wagon and rode that train all the way out, especially in the case that, that we know that, she was passing as well. Even though they kind of whispered about it, they didn't actually confront her about it. And probably because whatever JP Morgan said was gold, right?
Yeah. No one would dare confront her with him as her boss.
Exactly, right. And then, the storytelling, she brought out those stories around sort of how she won those negotiations. Again, that's uplifting her brand as the world-renowned expert in rare books and manuscripts. So I think she just, all those components together just made her a formidable force in the industry at the time.
She really did control her public image, and she did a brilliant job of it. And I'd just be curious about if you could share some insights or strategies that you found particularly helpful and effective in helping me to develop my own personal brand as a leader.
Yeah, so I think for you was interesting and challenging at the same time. Museums, libraries, rare manuscripts. You were very, very in a very niche place. So for you, and actually for anybody, it's really going back and understanding what are your goals? What are your career objectives? What leadership opportunities are you looking for? So answering those questions and understanding also who you want to talk to, who you want to invite in. And also your brand is what people say about you. One of the exercises I had you do is reach out to people in your network and in different areas of their life. And what are those 3 words that come to mind when they think about Anne-Marie? Because at the end of the day, the language they're using, that's how you're known. You need to figure out, again, how to control that narrative and get the words out there that you want to be known for.
The first time we worked together, you helped me to articulate what my professional purpose is. Why am I in this field? What am I hoping to bring? Who am I hoping to reach? My professional purpose is to make people feel at home in historically exclusive places and entitled to participate in the arts. That's, for me, what this is all about. And this podcast is another way of doing that by demystifying what it takes to be a leader in this field, especially if you're coming from an underrepresented background or group. And, I think I said to you pretty early on, like I wanted the podcast, especially like the interview sections of the podcast, to capture the conversations that I'm having with people, because I get approached a lot by young people in the field who are asking me like, how did you get into this? Like, can you give me any career advice? And so for me, part of the reason why I'm doing this is to kind of like share more broadly those conversations that I'm having anyway. And then when I reached out to you to ask you to help me with the marketing for the podcast instead, I shared with you that I want to elevate my professional profile. And I want to find and share my own unique voice. And I figured out a way to do that through this podcast, through this really unique like story. And so that was the starting off point for you and I working again and thinking about like, how do I promote the podcast in a way that I'm reaching my peers and people coming up and really people in the industry. My intended audience is people in libraries and museums, and especially people of color or people who are from any underrepresented group who feel kind of marginalized and just want to have some different role models. How can today's professionals manage their public perception when aspects of their personal style deviate from conventional norms, just like Green? She wasn't the stereotypical librarian.
I think it starts with having sort of an internal confidence within yourself, right? Because she had the confidence to like wear that hat. She had the confidence to be traveling all over the place. She had the confidence to like literally spend, what was it, $42,000 for a manuscript back in the 1900s. So I think you definitely have to figure out a way to both demonstrate and command respect. And then you have to have the education to also back it up. She clearly had that knowledge. She had that expertise. The other thing is the visual matters. And I think Belle recognized that with, that's why she led with the photos, because people see the photos and it stops. But I would say also for women of color, the other thing that we would have to be aware of too is claiming your authentic self.
Wonderful. So do you have any words of wisdom that you would give to those starting their own personal branding journey? What would you recommend for them to kind of get started in a way that they can blend their professional expertise and their distinctive, authentic personal identity?
Well, first thing is just get started. Consistency would be the second thing. Understand your why, especially for women. I would say don't be afraid of self-promotion. And that's actually one of the reasons why I have clients start out with talking to everybody and getting those 3 words, because then when you write your narrative, you can say, I'm known for it. And I would say the last thing is just, again, in terms of the consistency, also make sure you're consistent across your platform. Your messaging just has to be consistent throughout.
And what does bossing like Belle mean to you, Angela?
I think boss like Belle is like being confident in your authentic self.
And even though she was passing to be her authentic self.
Yep, exactly.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me. If you want to learn about more me, jump on over my LinkedIn, Angela Pitter. Thanks.
So you've heard me speak before about what a sanctuary my hair salon is. It's a space where I can go and be in community with other Black women, get myself together, and also work. It's also been really an important place and partner for me in helping me develop my own personal style and look. And I am just thrilled to take you all today into my salon and to meet my stylist, Dee, and to hear about how she's helped me transform my look, inspired by Belle. Hi, Dee.
Hi.
Welcome to Boss Like Belle.
Thanks for having me. So I'm Deidre Stubbs. You call me Dee. And I work at Simply Erin's Unisex here in Cambridge, Mass. I've been a stylist for over 30 plus years. I've been working here at Simply Erin's for 7 years next month.
Do you remember when I first started coming here? what my hair looked like, what kind of hairstyle I wanted to wear, what pictures I showed you. Do you remember?
Yes. So I remember you wearing your hair straight and you wanted the Olivia Pope look. Back then it was, the style that was in that everyone was looking for. And then when you came back after the pandemic, you changed up. And I thought it was amazing. I was happy. But I know that sometimes it's hard to change over, to your natural hair and wearing it in natural styles and trying to figure out what that looks like for you and what the maintenance will be.
The Olivia Pope.
Yes.
She was the main protagonist of the hit TV series Scandal. And it was really a big deal because Kerry Washington, the actress who played her, it was the first primetime TV series that had an African-American woman leading it in about 30 or 40 years. I loved her hairstyle. I loved her clothes. I was really trying to model my work wardrobe and look on her. You used to always tease me a little bit, but I would come in with my little picture of Kerry Washington as Olivia Pope and ask you to make my hair look like that. And you always did. It looked amazing. It had the little flip. It was all smooth and shiny. I loved it.
Yeah.
So as you just alluded to, in the meantime, there's been this thing called the pandemic, right? And it had devastating impacts on so many people around the world.
Yeah.
And it also had impacts on people in smaller ways, beyond health. And for me and for many Black women who weren't able to come to their hair salon in that period, we were on our own. And many of us for the first time having to maintain our hair, etc. So, as you said, when I came back to the salon after the pandemic, when you reopened, my hair was natural and I had a short little afro.
Yeah.
Right? And I was kind of like, help, I think I want to keep this, but I don't know what to do with
to
my
maintain
hair.
it.
To
Yeah.
maintain it,
Yeah.
and also just to make it look good because I was just trying my best.
So coming in, of course, we ask you for inspiration pictures, and then we can kind of see what you like and what you don't like, what you think will work, what you think you can't maintain, right? But to add on, how can we style it to make it look like me, feel like me, but also be, okay to be presentable for work or a meeting or pictures or anything like that. So I remember our first one was we did a couple of flat twists on the side, and then you just did product application, Yeah. And I thought you looked amazing with that. And then you got adventurous, oh, what if we do some on both sides? And then just, so we played with that for a little while. And then I feel like you stepped out of the box where doing the flat twist, and it gave you another sleek style because you're already a fashionista, in my opinion. I love your clothes. I love your grapevines and how you put things together. So I don't think you had that problem at all. We just needed the hair to match your style and to give you a more edge. And I feel like you're already rocking it,
That is so kind of you. Wearing my hair natural for the first time in my adult life inspired me to actually start wearing contemporary African clothing because I felt like my hair now matched the clothes.
Yeah.
I've now started wearing those clothes to work as well. And so it's been like this wonderful kind of symbiosis of the hair and the clothing and then just becoming more confident to go to work as myself.
Yes.
And not as Olivia Pope.
Right. I do feel like there has been a sense of change and confidence. I think that is great. And I think that you've already found your niche as far as styles, oh, I think I want to try this.
So Belle Green, who was, she's African-American, but passing, if you look at photographs of her hair is straight. I think you can see a bit of texture there. So for me, her hair itself was not a model, but more just her overall style and how she dressed atypically for a librarian at the time. And so for me, when we started talking about how I could wear natural styles, the person who came to my mind immediately was the Nigerian author Chimamanda Ngozi Adichie. I love her work, but I love her style. I feel like she really rocks African hairstyles, very elegantly. She always just looks so unique and beautiful. And so for me, I've gone from kind of Olivia Pope to Chimamanda Ngozi Adichie. So what are you noticing in your experience? You just said you've got a 30-year career as a hairstylist. about Black women wearing natural hair textures and styles in the workplace?
I think some clients have an issue with wearing the hair natural per se because they have an image that they feel that they have to uphold, whether with how they dress or how they wear their hair. And maybe there are some rules and regulations depending on where they work. I do feel that some people have an issue with embracing their natural hairstyle where they feel like they have to wear their hair straight. And if they don't wear it anything.
But in the types of libraries that I work in, I always feel like the hairstyles that I wear now, I feel like attracts a lot of attention to me personally, and also attracts attention to me being a Black woman, right? In a space where there aren't many Black women working in my field. And I kind of feel like with my hair straight and dressed a certain way, it was kind of like you're flying a bit under the radar, trying not to attract too much attention to yourself, which is kind of ridiculous because I still have my brown skin. I still look different, than the majority of my colleagues. So for me, it was like not wanting to attract too much attention to myself. And I feel like by, this transition that I've made over the last year, inspired by, Belle Green, and her, her own style and fashion in the workplace, and how she kind of like really curated her personal image. I've just become more comfortable with people noticing me, who I actually am, and what my ancestry and heritage.
Being a stylist, I feel like you're already easy on the eyes, right? In your style, the way you dress, the way you carry yourself, and whether you wear your hair straight or we're doing a natural style. I think that is just enhance your beauty more, and people are just noticing when they should have been noticing already. So and I feel like more of your personality has come out with, so it's been a pleasure to see you transform, with the different styles. Yeah.
What sticks out to me in this story is that there's this persistent myth that being authentic as a leader means being radically transparent. So you share every thought, every feeling, every personal detail. And Belle didn't do that. And Angela talks about effective personal branding being authentic while adding value to your audience, right? And one of my favorite leadership thinkers, Herminia Ibarra, talks about the authenticity paradox. And she's very big on helping us recognize that nothing is static, that we are evolving humans, right? Whether it's about our career choices or our self-presentation at work, we have a core set of values, but leadership means adapting to what the world presents us with, instead of thinking there's a static true self that we either reveal or we don't reveal, right? And I think that's so relevant in this story, in your story and in Belle's. So Angela talks about what's going to add value to your audience. And so when you were putting together this podcast and you've been kind of thinking, behind the scenes along the way about like, what do I want to share and what do I not want to share? It's you've done a very beautiful job at weaving together the personal and professional. So can you talk to us a little bit about how you've thought about that process?
My starting off point was just my own comfort level, right?
Right.
So, and to be quite honest, as we've progressed with the podcast, I've just become more comfortable and also more daring and bold about what I'm willing to talk about or not. But there have been a couple of subjects where you and I have kind of sat down like, do we really want to talk about that? Like, do I really want to share some of like my past medical history and decisions, like, all this kind of stuff.
Yeah.
So I feel like I share enough that the story resonates with listeners and is not generic, but is specific to both Belle and to me, and I hope brings value without revealing all. Look, I think of myself as an open book, and I generally am extremely sharing with people because I find it's the way that I usually connect with people, because the more I share, the more other people feel comfortable sharing back with me. This is kind of like a version of that.
It's interesting. What comes to mind for me is a conversation we had, a coaching conversation a year ago. And we were talking about this project and your vision and what inspires you about it. There's a way in which your core, it is about telling your story, but for the purposes, for the goal of teaching other people about Black women leaders, about librarians. It's just a matter of kind of weaving through the different choices around what's going to be helpful to the story that I tell publicly versus what can I keep for myself because that's my own business, right?
Yeah. Some of the decisions about what to share and what not to share is also to do with the political climate we're in right
Yep,
now.
yep.
And, some of the things that I felt more comfortable sharing is because there are other women sharing personal
Sure.
stories
Yeah,
too.
yeah.
And I wanted to add my voice to theirs.
Right. No, that makes sense. This question of evolution versus static identity, right? So if we think about how this podcast has progressed, right, you've changed your comfort level because you've interacted with your audience and seen how they responded. And that opens up different possibilities for you in terms of self-disclosure, in terms of comfort level, right? And I think in some ways it's, you've adapted, it kind of lets you give yourself permission to say and do more. And it reminds me of the comment when speaking about your hair. Dee talked about your personality coming out more fully, going through the process of doing your hair more naturally, right? As you look at this journey, how would you describe your evolution around authenticity?
Yeah, so it's lovely that you picked up on that specific thing that Dee said, because like reflecting on it, I think I didn't fully ever appreciate how much of a straitjacket my straight hair was actually.
Interesting.
Well, what a pun. That was an
Yeah.
unintended pun, but perfect.
Yeah.
Because it was kind of like a prison in a way, like not wanting to get my hair wet,
Right.
not
Right.
wanting to get too sweaty when you work out or things like that, because your hair is going to revert to its natural state, and spending
Right.
so much money to get your hair straightened and all of this kind of stuff. And I think that now it's like one less thing for me to think about
Yeah.
on a day-to-day basis,
Yeah.
because my hair now in its natural state, I control it, not the
Yeah.
other way around.
Wow. Yeah. That's such a
And-
shift.
And I think some of the, that was a very personal decision, but it's also playing out on a national stage as well, because, in the United States, there's this thing called the Crown Act, which is such a fabulous name. I love it.
Yeah.
More than half of the states in the United States have adopted this law that bans race-based discrimination against people's natural hair texture. So the history of that is that a lot of Black people, and especially women in particular, felt pressure to straighten their hair, especially in the workplace, and were being discriminated against in both education and like professional settings,
Yeah, I'm
because
sure.
of choices they were making about wearing their hair naturally. This is from the Crown Act website. So Black women's hair is 2.5 times more likely to be perceived as unprofessional. Black women are 55% more likely to feel like they have to wear their hair straight to a job interview to be successful. They're twice as likely to experience microaggressions in the workplace than Black women with straight hair. Over 20% of Black women in the age range from like 25 to 34 have been sent home from work because of their hair.
Wow.
Nearly 44% of Black women under age 35 feel pressure to have a headshot with straight hair. I know about that. I thought hard about changing my headshot as well. So it's also been just really powerful to see this concept and acknowledgement that many people would have liked to wear their hair
Right.
naturally but didn't feel comfortable doing it, and now they have something to point to and say, well, actually I can wear my hair like this, I can send my child to school, and like they're not going to get sent home and excluded from school because of wearing their hair in locks or braids or things like that. So it's been also, I felt like I've had some kind of bolstering or some backup for this
Yeah.
very personal choice as well.
What's fascinating about this is both your personal journey with this and your story kind of stands alone, and then thinking all of this conversation that is happening right now about DEI and what that looks like and what it means and what it's related to, and there's a lot of really nonsensical things that's floating around, but this is just such an interesting example of an interesting and powerful example of a policy decision that was made, a law that was enacted, and how it hits someone in her day-to-day life, like how it impacts, your ability to feel comfortable enough with yourself, to feel authentic, to be able to bring, your best self and evolve to a stronger and stronger leader and human, the way you're styling your hair, but your entire growth trajectory. And that's amazing. Thank you.
That's all for this episode of Boss Like Belle. Next time, we'll explore how Belle overcame credentialism to become a fellow of the Medieval Academy of America and inspired me to embrace my identity as a medievalist. We'll be joined by the Academy's Executive Director, Lisa Fagan-Davis, and Nair Otaño-Gracia, Assistant Professor of English at the University of New Mexico, and a key figure in the medievalists of colour. Together, we'll explore how their organisations have adopted Belle as a patron saint of diversity in medieval studies.
One of the really important things that we've been trying to do is make this organization a more welcoming place for people of color who have traditionally really been denied space at the table at an organization like this. Belle has really become a symbol of that, which is kind of ironic, of course, because at the time she wasn't talking about her heritage.
Being a medievalist of color also means you have life experiences so different from the mainstream that you're enabled to see the past and the world differently and bring perspectives that are jarring, productive, and transformative for your fields and your disciplines. And I think right there, that's to me what medievalist of color does. It allows people that don't often feel seen in the field of medieval studies to have strength together.
The second woman and the first person of color, Miss Belle DaCosta Green, unlike any other.
The Boss Like Belle podcast is created by Anne-Marie Eze. Hosted by Anne-Marie Eze and Rachel Lowell-Ellison. Produced by Anne-Marie Eze and Diego Senor, executive producer at Les Central Podcasts. Edited by Nicole Pizarro at Les Central Podcasts. Sound engineers Clayton Scoble and Brian Leach at Harvard Library. Special consultants Philip Palmer and Erica Chalella, co-curators of the exhibition Belle DaCosta Green, A Librarian's Legacy, the Morgan Library and Museum. Newspaper headlines performed by Louis Day. The Ballad of Belle DaCosta Green, composed and performed by Big Piff and under license from Big Piff. All other songs are from Pixabay.com platform. Jaded, Vinyl R&B and Soul by Audio Clubs. Thinking Time by Anastasia Chabarova. Meditation Music by Levgen Poltavasky. Piano Dream Clown Meditation by Lee Robinson. Cover art by Scott Murray based on a photograph of Belle DaCosta Green by Clarence H. White, 1911, courtesy of the Biblioteca Berenson I Tatti, the Harvard University Center for the Italian Renaissance Studies. The Boss Like Belle podcast is also supported by the Morgan Library and Museum and made possible by the generous support of Harvard Library, whose commitment to fostering knowledge and research enables the sharing of ideas and scholarship with the broader community.